36 years ago, a 27-year-old woman vanished from her lakeside home in New Jersey after a night out with friends. Police quickly identified a prime suspect, a man who lived nearby and may have known her through the bank where she worked. Detectives believed he was responsible almost from the beginning, but they couldn't prove it. For more than 3 decades, the case remained frozen in time. The victim's parents died without seeing justice. The suspect moved away, started a new life, and appeared to have escaped punishment forever. But then something unexpected happened. In another state, the same man became the focus of a second disappearance investigation. That investigation led authorities to collect his DNA. Years later, advances in forensic science finally unlocked evidence that had been waiting since 1990. What investigators discovered stunned an entire community and brought a 36-year mystery crashing to an end. Before we begin, welcome to Cold Case Reopened. If you enjoy detailed true crime documentaries based on real cases, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an investigation. The year was 1990. The United States stood at the edge of a new era. The Cold War was nearing its end. The world was changing rapidly. But in a peaceful corner of northern New Jersey, nobody could have imagined that a crime was about to occur that would remain unsolved for more than 3 decades. Nestled among dense forests, winding roads, and sparkling lakes was the community of Highland Lakes. It was the kind of place where people felt safe. Neighbors knew each other. Families spent time outdoors. Residents often left windows open during warm summer evenings. Violent crime was not something people expected to encounter there. Among those residents was 27-year-old LISA MARIE MCBRIDE. Friends described Lisa as responsible, hardworking, and dependable. She worked at a local bank and was known for always showing up on time. She lived alone in a modest lakeside home on Glen Road. It was a quiet life. A normal life. And that was exactly what made what happened next so disturbing. On the evening of June 22, 1990, Lisa went out with friends to a local pub. There was nothing unusual about the night. No arguments. No threats. No indication that danger was waiting for her. Like countless evenings before, she enjoyed time with friends and eventually headed home. But while Lisa was away, someone was already preparing for her return. Under the cover of darkness, an unknown individual approached her house. Investigators would later discover that the telephone wires leading into the residence had been deliberately cut. This was not random vandalism. It was preparation. Someone wanted to make sure that no emergency call could be placed from inside the home. The intruder then moved to the rear of the property. There, a window screen was sliced open. A log was positioned beneath the window. It appeared that the attacker had carefully created a point of entry. Then, after entering the house, that person waited. Alone. Hidden. In darkness. Waiting for Lisa to come home. Sometime during the early hours of June 23, Lisa returned to her house. What happened inside those walls remains one of the most terrifying parts of the entire case. She walked into what should have been the safest place in her life. Instead, she walked directly into an ambush. The next morning, concern began to spread. Lisa failed to report to work. For those who knew her, this was immediately alarming. She was dependable. Reliable. The type of employee who never simply disappeared. Attempts to contact her failed. Phone calls went unanswered. As concern grew, family members and colleagues decided to check on her personally. What they found inside the house would confirm their worst fears. The telephone line had been cut. The rear window screen had been slashed. Furniture appeared disturbed. Most disturbing of all, the bedding from Lisa's bedroom had vanished.
Check the back.
The sheets were gone. The blankets were gone.
Clear.
Even the pillows had disappeared. It was as though someone had intentionally removed anything that might contain evidence. Lisa herself was nowhere to be found. There was no note. No explanation. No sign that she had left willingly. Investigators immediately recognized that this was not a missing person case in the traditional sense. Everything pointed toward foul play. The community quickly mobilized. If you enjoy detailed, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an investigation. Volunteers joined law enforcement officers in searching the surrounding area. The woods were examined. Nearby lakes were searched. Trails and remote locations were investigated. Everyone hoped Lisa would somehow be found alive. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Still there was no sign of her. As summer faded into autumn, the optimism that had fueled the search slowly gave way to fear. The possibility that Lisa might never return home became increasingly difficult to ignore. Then, 4 months after she vanished, a discovery shattered any remaining hope. In October of 1990, a hunter entered a wooded area near the Delaware Water Gap. The location was remote. Quiet. Far enough away that someone could dispose of evidence without attracting attention. There, among the trees, human remains were discovered. Authorities were called immediately. The remains were later identified as Lisa Marie McBride. The devastating news confirmed what her family had feared for months. Lisa was gone. An examination revealed evidence of violence. Her left cheekbone had been fractured. This was not an accident. This was homicide. Investigators determined that Lisa had been killed during the same night she disappeared. Her body had then been transported away from her home and abandoned in the woods. The discovery transformed the investigation. Detectives now faced a murder case. The question was no longer whether Lisa had been harmed. The question was who had done it. Fortunately, investigators had one advantage. Physical evidence. Forensic specialists collected biological material connected to the crime scene. At the time, DNA technology was still relatively new compared to modern standards. Scientists understood its potential. But the databases and analytical methods available in 1990 were far more limited than what exists today. Still, investigators carefully preserved every piece of evidence. They hoped that one day technology would advance enough to reveal the truth. As it turned out, that decision would become the single most important factor in solving the case. Almost immediately, detectives focused their attention on one particular individual. Robert William McCaffrey, Jr. He lived in Sussex County. He was familiar with the area. Investigators believed he may have known Lisa through the bank where she worked. The connection was enough to place him under scrutiny. Detectives interviewed him. They examined his background. They explored possible links between him and the victim. The more they learned, the more interested they became. But interest alone was not enough. Police needed evidence. And evidence was exactly what they lacked. No eyewitness could place him inside Lisa's home. No direct physical evidence connected him to the murder scene. Investigators strongly suspected him. Yet suspicion could not support a criminal charge. Years passed. The investigation continued. But despite repeated efforts, detectives could not gather enough proof to bring the case before a jury. The person they believed responsible remained free. And Lisa's family remained trapped in uncertainty. Little did anyone know that the answers they needed were already hidden within the evidence collected from that crime scene. The problem was that science had not yet advanced far enough to uncover them. The truth was waiting. And it would remain hidden for more than 3 decades. But eventually, one unexpected event hundreds of miles away would change everything. And when it did, it would bring investigators closer to solving the murder of Lisa Marie McBride than ever before. As the years passed, the investigation into Lisa Marie McBride's murder slowly faded from public attention. But it never disappeared from the minds of her family. Every birthday. Every holiday. Every family gathering carried the same painful absence. Lisa should have been there. Instead, all they had were questions. Meanwhile, detectives continued working behind the scenes. The case remained open. Boxes of evidence remained preserved. Investigative reports continued to grow. And one name continued appearing at the center of nearly every discussion. Robert William McCaffrey, Jr. From the earliest days of the investigation, authorities viewed him as their strongest suspect. Yet despite years of scrutiny, they still lacked the one thing necessary to move forward. Proof. Investigators knew that solving a homicide requires more than suspicion. It requires evidence that can withstand challenges in court. Evidence that can convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. Without that evidence, prosecutors risk losing the case entirely. And so the years continued to pass. McCaffrey remained free. Life moved on. At least on the surface. Then an important piece of information emerged. According to later investigative records, sometime around the mid-1990s, McCaffrey allegedly made a shocking statement to an acquaintance. During a conversation, he reportedly admitted that he had killed Lisa McBride. The reason he allegedly gave was chilling. According to the witness, McCaffrey claimed that Lisa had refused to go on a date with him. Rejection. A simple refusal. Investigators would later learn that this alleged confession included additional details. The witness recalled McCaffrey saying that after the crime, he became worried he might have left something behind that could identify him. Because of that fear, he allegedly attempted to return to Lisa's residence in the days following her disappearance. If true, the statement was extraordinary. It suggested knowledge that only the killer would possess. Yet there was one major problem. The information never reached law enforcement. For years, the alleged confession remained unreported. No official statement was taken. No report was filed. No detective knew it existed. As a result, one of the most significant developments in the entire investigation remained buried in silence. At the same time, McCaffrey was preparing for a major change in his own life. In the year 1996, 6 years after Lisa's murder, he left New Jersey and relocated to South Carolina. To many people, it appeared to be a normal move. A fresh start. A new chapter. But investigators would later suspect that he brought something with him. Items connected to Lisa. Authorities eventually came to believe that several of Lisa's personal belongings had been taken on the night of the crime and kept for years afterward. Among them were her black wallet, her New Jersey driver's license, and a distinctive brass keychain engraved with the word LISA. Investigators later described these items as possible trophies. Objects retained by a killer as reminders of the crime. Whether those items still existed remained unknown. But their disappearance added another disturbing layer to an already horrifying case. Back in New Jersey, Lisa's file remained active. The case was never officially closed. Detectives refused to give up. Even as years became decades, they continued searching for new leads. Unfortunately, every lead seemed to end in frustration. There was still no direct witness. No confession on record. And no usable DNA comparison. The investigation appeared frozen in time. Then another woman disappeared. And suddenly, the name Robert McCaffrey returned to the attention of law enforcement. In 1997, McCaffrey married a woman named Marjorie Gale Broom. The couple eventually settled in South Carolina. To outsiders, they appeared to be building a normal life together. But that image would not last. On March 18, 2012, Gale McCaffrey vanished. She disappeared from the couple's home in Charleston, South Carolina. Just like Lisa, there was no convincing evidence that she had left voluntarily. Friends and family became concerned. Authorities launched an investigation. As time passed, suspicion began focusing on Gale's husband, Robert McCaffrey. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Another woman. Another disappearance. Another case surrounded by unanswered questions. A task force involving multiple agencies began examining Gail's disappearance. The case attracted national attention. Television programs covered the mystery. Investigators worked tirelessly to determine what had happened. But once again, proving a crime was difficult. Gail's body was never found. Without a body and without sufficient evidence, prosecutors faced serious challenges. Eventually, authorities arrested McCaffrey. However, the charge was not murder. Instead, he was accused of obstructing the investigation into Gail's disappearance. The arrest itself might have seemed minor compared to the unanswered mystery surrounding his wife. But what happened next would become one of the most important developments in the Lisa McBride investigation. During the arrest process, McCaffrey's DNA was collected. Like countless other criminal offenders, his genetic profile was entered into the National DNA Database. At the time, few people realized the significance of that step. For investigators in New Jersey, however, it represented something they had been missing for more than 2 decades. For the first time, the prime suspect in Lisa's murder had a DNA profile available for comparison. It should have been the breakthrough detectives needed. But another obstacle remained. The DNA recovered from Lisa's case was not simple. It consisted of a mixed sample containing genetic material from more than one person. The technology available at the time struggled to separate the profiles clearly enough for a national database comparison. As a result, even though McCaffrey's DNA now existed in the system, no match occurred. The opportunity appeared to slip away. Once again, the case remained unsolved. Years continued to pass. Then something remarkable happened. Investigators refused to accept defeat. Advances in forensic science were changing criminal investigations across America. Cases once considered impossible were suddenly being solved. Cold cases from decades earlier were producing arrests. New technologies allowed scientists to extract information from evidence that had previously been unusable. Authorities in New Jersey began wondering whether Lisa's case might benefit from those same advances. The answer would eventually change everything. If you are still watching at this point, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. Because what investigators discovered next would finally bring them face to face with evidence they had been seeking for more than 3 decades. In 2019, authorities officially renewed their efforts. The investigation received fresh attention. Detectives began reviewing every report, every witness statement, and every piece of evidence collected since 1990. Nothing was considered too small. Nothing was overlooked. Fresh eyes examined old facts. And that process led investigators to a critical witness. During interviews conducted that year, detectives spoke with a former social and employment associate of McCaffrey. For the first time, the witness shared details of the alleged confession from years earlier. The information that had remained hidden for decades was finally documented. According to the witness, McCaffrey had openly admitted responsibility for Lisa's death. The statement provided investigators with exactly the type of evidence they had always suspected existed. But even then, detectives knew they needed something stronger. Witness testimony could be challenged. Memories fade. Defense attorneys attack credibility. Physical evidence remains far more powerful. And investigators believed the physical evidence was finally about to reveal its secrets. Advanced forensic testing was ordered. Evidence from Lisa's bedroom was sent to specialists capable of performing analyses that were unimaginable in 1990. Scientists carefully examined the preserved samples. The results confirmed that male DNA was present. The challenge now was separating it from the victim's DNA. It was a painstaking process requiring sophisticated technology and extraordinary precision. But for the first time, investigators believed success was possible. After more than 3 decades, science was finally catching up to the crime. And soon, one DNA profile would change everything. For more than 3 decades, investigators had been chasing shadows. Every lead seemed to stop just short of proving what they believed had happened inside Lisa McBride's lakeside home. But now, after years of waiting, advances in forensic science were providing opportunities that detectives in 1990 could never have imagined. The evidence that had been carefully preserved all those years was about to speak. And when it did, it would change everything. In the year 2020, investigators submitted critical evidence from Lisa's bedroom for advanced forensic testing. Among the items examined was evidence recovered from the headboard inside the room where detectives believed the attack had occurred. Laboratory analysis confirmed the presence of both male and female DNA. The finding was significant. However, there was still a problem. The genetic material was mixed together. Scientists could detect the male profile, but separating it completely remained difficult. Without a clean profile, the evidence could not be fully utilized within the national DNA database system. Investigators had come close. But close was not enough. The case continued moving forward, though progress was slow. Detectives compared the available DNA profile against numerous potential suspects. One comparison after another produced no definitive result. Years of work generated countless investigative hours. Still, authorities refused to abandon the effort. They believed the answer was there. Hidden within the evidence. Waiting to be uncovered. Then came another critical decision. In 2022, investigators took a step that demonstrated just how committed they were to solving the case. Lisa McBride's remains were exhumed. The goal was simple but crucial. Scientists needed an uncontaminated sample of Lisa's DNA. By obtaining a separate genetic profile from the victim, forensic experts hoped they could isolate the unknown male DNA from the mixed samples collected at the crime scene. The process required extraordinary care. It also required technology that simply did not exist when Lisa was murdered. Using advanced genetic techniques, scientists finally succeeded. For the first time, investigators possessed a clean male DNA profile that could be submitted into the national database. After 36 years, the evidence was finally ready. The profile was entered into the system. Then everyone waited. Detectives waited. Prosecutors waited. Most importantly, Lisa's family waited. The answer they had spent decades hoping for was now only a database search away. Weeks later, the result arrived. And it was exactly what investigators had suspected for years. The unknown male DNA matched Robert William McCaffrey Jr., the prime suspect. The man whose name had appeared in investigative files since the earliest days of the case. The man detectives had been unable to charge for more than 3 decades. Now, finally, they had the evidence. The DNA match connected McCaffrey directly to evidence recovered from Lisa's bedroom. It was the breakthrough investigators had spent decades pursuing. Suddenly, the pieces that had remained scattered for years began falling into place. The alleged confession. The suspicious behavior. The long-standing investigative focus. And now the DNA. Together, they created a dramatically stronger case. Authorities moved quickly. Plans were made. Multiple law enforcement agencies coordinated their efforts. They knew they had one opportunity to bring the suspect into custody. On the evening of April 10, 2026, officers conducted a coordinated operation in North Carolina. McCaffrey's vehicle was stopped. The decades-long search for justice reached a historic turning point. The man who had spent years living freely was placed under arrest. For investigators who had devoted portions of their careers to the case, the moment was deeply significant. For Lisa's family, it was something even more powerful. It was the first real step toward answers. Following the arrest, authorities executed a search warrant at McCaffrey's residence. Investigators searched carefully for evidence connected to the murder. Among the items seized were multiple firearms and electronic devices. Yet detectives were still searching for something else. The personal belongings that had vanished along with Lisa. Her wallet. Her driver's license. And the distinctive brass keychain investigators believed may have been kept as trophies. Those items remained missing. Whether they still existed was unknown. But investigators continued searching. Soon after the arrest, prosecutors announced the charges. First-degree murder. First-degree kidnapping. And second-degree burglary. The charges reflected what investigators believed had happened during the early morning hours when Lisa returned home. According to prosecutors, the evidence indicated that someone entered her residence unlawfully, kidnapped her, and ultimately killed her. The announcement sent shockwaves through the community. Many residents of Highland Lakes had lived with the memory of the crime for most of their lives. Some had grown up hearing about the case. Others remembered the search efforts firsthand. For many, the arrest felt surreal. A mystery that had lingered for decades suddenly had a suspect in custody. But while the arrest brought relief, it also reopened old wounds. Families who had spent years trying to move forward were forced to revisit painful memories. Among those most affected was Lisa's family. The people who had never stopped waiting. The people who had spent 36 years wondering whether justice would ever arrive. For them, the arrest represented something that had once seemed impossible. Hope. Sadly, not everyone who longed for answers lived long enough to see that day. Members of Lisa's family spoke publicly after the arrest. Their statements reflected both relief and heartbreak. Her parents had passed away without witnessing the breakthrough. They never saw the arrest. They never heard the charges read in court. They never experienced the moment they had waited decades to see. Yet family members expressed hope that they could finally rest more peacefully. It was a powerful reminder of the true cost of delayed justice. Every cold case affects more than a victim. It affects entire families. Entire communities. Entire generations. Days later, McCaffrey appeared before a New Jersey court. Wearing an inmate uniform and restrained by handcuffs, he faced the charges publicly. The hearing was brief. He pleaded not guilty. The legal process was officially underway. As of this recording, the criminal case remains part of ongoing judicial proceedings. The allegations against McCaffrey have not yet been proven in court, and like all defendants, he remains entitled to the presumption of innocence until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But even as the legal battle moves forward, another mystery continues to haunt investigators. The disappearance of Gail McCaffrey. Years before his arrest in Lisa's case, McCaffrey had become the focus of suspicion surrounding the disappearance of his wife. Gail vanished from South Carolina and has never been found. Despite extensive searches and investigations, her whereabouts remain unknown. No body has been recovered. No murder charge has been filed. The case remains open. And for Gail's loved ones, the uncertainty continues. The parallels between the two cases have generated countless questions. Questions that may never be fully answered. Investigators believe there may still be information known only to one person. Information that could explain what happened not only to Lisa, but perhaps to Gail as well. Whether those answers will ever emerge remains uncertain. What is certain is that one crime scene, preserved carefully in 1990, ultimately became the key to unlocking the truth decades later. The Lisa McBride case stands as a powerful example of why cold cases matter. Evidence matters. Persistence matters. And time does not always protect those responsible for violent crimes. For 36 years, technology was the missing piece. The evidence existed. The suspect existed. The investigators never gave up. They simply needed science to catch up. Eventually, it did. A single DNA match succeeded where decades of investigative work alone could not. It transformed suspicion into evidence. and evidence into an arrest. As we close this case, one haunting question remains. What would have happened if the evidence from Lisa's home had not been preserved? Would the truth have remained hidden forever? Would her family still be waiting for answers? Thankfully, we will never have to know. Because after 36 long years, the investigation finally moved forward. Justice may have been delayed, but the pursuit of truth never stopped. Thank you for watching this episode of Cold Case Reopened. If this case impacted you, take a moment to leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Your engagement helps more people discover these stories and keeps the memories of victims alive. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a future investigation. And if there is a true crime case you would like us to cover next, let us know in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember that even the coldest cases can still reveal the truth.